Hello and welcome to MagicGatheringStrat. I'm Binkabi and this will be my first non-gameplay video. So bear with me here, it's my first, so it might be a bit shaky and I might miss something, but the thing I want to talk to you about is the value of a card. And I'm gonna focus on limited for the most part, but you can apply it to constructed as well. What is the value of a card? Constant question, hard to answer. Sometimes it's very obvious at first. Let's say lightning bolt, 3 damage to creature or player for 1 red, and searing spear, 3 damage to creature and player for 2 mana. Pretty easy to say that lightning bolt is the best. It's the more valuable card if you want, because it's cheaper. But even then, when it's this crystal clear that one card is so much better than the other because it costs 50% of the mana. Let's say you have a metagame that is just overflowing with mental missteps. Like, let's say Modern before it was banned. Every deck jam 4. Is Lightning Bolt really that much better than Searing Spear at that point? Because Searing Spear costs 2. Even though it's a turn later, it can't be countered by mental misstep. So, is it? Well, that's what we're gonna try to find out during the course here. I've lined up a bunch of cards here and I'm gonna go through each pile and talk about a specific section of the value that I want to talk about. So the first stop we're gonna make is valuing a card in a vacuum. Maybe you've heard the expression. Basically it means, how good is this card if I disregard everything else? So let's take Runeclaw Bear, 2/2 for 2, only flavor text, nothing else, irrelevant creature type as well. It's just a 2/2 for 2. So in a vacuum, that's what you get. It will always be a 2/2 for 2. So it will be pretty good on turn 2, not that great on turn 3, and after that it will not be especially good at all. And this is disregarding everything that has to do with context of the deck and the format and everything else. So just as a 2/2 for 2, it's not that exciting. It's nothing I would like to first pick. Then we have a card like Grave Titan. In a vacuum, what does this do? Well, it will be the biggest thing on the board. Even if it's not, it will trade for it. It comes with additional guys, 2/2/2s. And every time it attacks, it will just grow your army. It's basically a 1 card win condition. It's just gonna crush everything. There's nothing they can do to stop this. So compared to Runeclaw Bear, this seems pretty much infinite better than the Runeclaw Bear. In the vacuum, of course. Keep that in mind. Just in the vacuum. We're not taking into account that the game might not go to turn 6 because you're facing an aggressive red deck or something. So in a vacuum, Grave Titan is far superior to Runeclaw Bear. Then we have a card like Iona, Shield of Emeria, constructed all-star. It's a 7/7 flying for 9 mana, and it prevents them from using their main color basically. Well, compared to the Grave Titan, it's pretty much up there. And in a vacuum, of course, this is just unbeatable. But then, when we're leaving the vacuum, we're gonna go to pile 3 here just in a second, but when we're leaving the vacuum, now we're taking into account other stuff. 9 mana in limited is just not possible if you're not playing in Zendikar, I guess, but in a normal format this is not gonna happen. 6 mana is pretty likely to happen. You can build your deck to go to 6, and 2 mana will basically always happen. It's just real bad luck if it's not. So the vacuum is a good way to start if you just want to see what a card could be capable of. Like, this will win you the game, this will win you the game, this will not win you the game, most likely, on its own, just by looking at the card. But then we're taking into account other stuff. We go to pile 3. Something like the format matters a lot. The first card I want to talk about is City Wayfinder. It was a pretty unplayable card in Theros Limited. Not unplayable, but it wasn't spectacular. It didn't do anything that decks needed it to do. There was a graveyard deck sometimes, but it just wasn't there. So this card was like a 3 out of 10 maybe on the scale. Then M15 come around and people saw this card and it's like, oh yeah, I remember that, it's a 3 out of 10. It's not really good. I'm gonna wheel that. Then after a while a graveyard deck was discovered. The tools were there, but people just didn't consider it to be a thing. And slowly the Wayfinders start creeping up. All of a sudden it didn't wheel anymore. All of a sudden it didn't even come 4th pick. And sooner rather than later it went like 2nd pick, 3rd pick. Why? Well, because the green-black graveyard deck was so good and this was the card. This was the glue, the engine, whatever you want to call it. This was the card. So just changing the environment could change the card's power and value a lot. We're gonna continue with Moorland Inquisitor. So this is a 2 for 2, pretty much like the Runeclaw Bear, and we have already decided that that wasn't spectacular. It has a tiny upside, it can get first strike. And yeah, you didn't do that often, but just the threat of activation is probably enough. But if we look at the set symbol, it's from Avacyn Restored. And I happen to play Avacyn Restored, so I know that 2-drops is basically the most valuable thing you can get in that set. Why? Well, because there is like 3 or 4 2-drops at all. So if you were on the play and had a 2-drop, you know it will connect at least once, and if it's this guy, he will connect 3 or 4 times, because the 3-drops were 2/2s or 3/2s maybe. There was like 1, 2, 3, but this will connect a lot of time. It's worth much damage. So in Avacyn Restored, this was the guy. Maybe not 1st pick, but 2nd pick, 3rd pick, sure. I mean, if you open like the 2/4 flying lifelink angel for 4, sure, take that over this. But the 2-drops, man, they were where it's at, compared to like a set like M15 or M14, I mean, leading us to divination. 2-drops here was completely crap. There was a few and they were pretty good, but they weren't relevant enough. What was relevant was divination, drawing cards, card advantage. Opportunity was like a slam 1st pick, a windmill slam 1st pick. But divination in, say, Theros was we're there again like a 3 or 4 out of 10. It's good to draw extra cards, obviously, but not if you're getting pounded in the face while you're doing it. So a card's value is strongly related to the format and the set it's in. It all depends on that. Divination ranks from like 2 to like 8 or 9. Same with the random 2-drop, and same with the 2-drop with an ability. So we can't just look at them in a vacuum. That's the place we can start, but we have to relate them to format, synergies, whatever. Which leads us over to the 4th pile, the combo pile, the synergies. So the first one is a combo from a core set. I believe it was M14 too, maybe M13 or M14. I don't really recall. A card like Act of Treason, pretty bad. I mean, it doesn't do much. It might help you to punch through for a bit of damage, but just in the vacuum, as we have talked about, it's not that great. It's like a 2 or 3 out of 10. Bloodthorn Vampire, basically the same. It's a low power, low toughness 2-drop with a pretty slim ability, if you don't take advantage of it, of course. And ta-da! You play this, you take their 2-drop or 3-drop, you punch in and then you sack it. Turns this into a removal with upside. That makes it from a 2 or 3 out of 10 to like an 8. Maybe 9. That's incredible. You ramp up the value of a card just by adding another card. Is this worth playing then? 2 pretty bad cards to make them good? Well, it depends. If you only have 1 active treason and 1 bloodthirst vampire, I'd say no. If you have like 3 or 4 sacrifice outlets and 3 or 4 active treasons, yeah, then it's totally worth it. The second combo is a personal favorite of mine, the Innistrad Fear, Invisible Stalker and Puncher's Cleaver. So you have a 1/1 that can't be blocked with hexproof. Decent card on its own. Just clocking them from 1 is not worth it, but you can throw anything on him and he will be good. +3/+0 for 3 and equip 3 is not worth it. If you have a human it gets lifelink, then it becomes much better, but still without a reasonable combo it's just like 4 or 5 maybe. Together they were unstoppable. 4 damage a turn and you gain 4 life. Unbeatable. There are so few cards that even interact with that in that set that it's just not fair. So this combo compared to the last combo, or synergy, whatever you want to call it, this contains 2 pieces that are decent on their own. One that is actually playable even without the other part. This not so much. You could run a random active treason in your aggressive deck, that's fine, but this is much more desirable than this, in my opinion at least. Much more valuable. The last I want to talk about is Burning Vengeance and Flashback spells. So now we're at the peak. Now we have really gone deep here. Burning Vengeance does nothing unless you have flashback spells. Just nothing. It's 3 mana, discard a card. Dream Twist. Well, unless it's the final cards that you're milling out, it does nothing. If you mill yourself and have some value, well, it does something, but probably not worth it. This is like a 13th, 14th pick if you're not playing dedicated mill or flashback. This is also a 13th, 14th pick if you're not dedicated flashback. Together they were amazing. One of my favorite decks from this set. Just play Burning Vengeance and every flashback spell you can. They can't play guys, they can't do anything, you just win straight off. So we've come full circle basically. Decent cards and a decent combo, pretty good cards and a good combo, horrible cards and a pretty amazing combo. So value of a card together and alone is pretty significant. They are very much different. Then we come to this pile, and you can see it's pretty powerful ones, and it's basically the cards that are really good no matter what you do. They ask so little of you and in return you get so much. Etherling. What it requires of you is basically 7 mana, but you could play it at 6, and after that it wins you the game. You basically can't lose with an Etherling in play. They can't kill it, it can't be blocked, it hits for tons of damage, and all it asks of you is mana. Mana and I guess time, but the value of this card is sky high. Compared to other cards we have already talked about that needs help, they need support, they need a strategy, this doesn't care. It wants you to have some life points and mana, then you win a game. Same basically with Keranos, cost a little less. This just says, if you get me onto the field, just stay alive and you will win the game. No problem. They can basically not kill it. It will either play a lightning bolt or draw an extra card every turn, which makes it almost impossible to lose. Doesn't require anything else. And obviously the theme here, same with Sphinx's Revelation. You know what you're gonna get. You're gonna get a ton of life to stabilize, a ton of cards to dominate the game, and all it requires is mana. Mana and time, nothing else, no setup cost. Fantastic cards. Which brings us to the next pile, which is the opposite. Cards that are pretty strong, if you have valued them as such. Take Birthing Pod. Constructed all-star in Modern. In Limited, not that great. Unless you build around it. Unless you have some 1-drops, 2-drops, 3-drops, 4-drops and so on. Usually you want to have that, but sometimes you end up with like 1 4-drop. That's not gonna cut it if you're gonna play Birthing Pod and have it be that great. So to make Birthing Pod good, you need to build your entire deck around it. But then it's probably up there with those cards. Not exactly, but almost. It could also be better. I mean, it just depends on the deck. But this requires you to do some work. Laboratory Maniac. Come on, the card has win the game on the card. It says it in the text box. You win the game. It has to be good, right? Well, no. Unless you build around it. If you can build your deck to mill itself and get this into play and somehow make sure it will stay alive, then you win the game. There can't be a greater reward than that, but it requires you to do a lot of work. You need to value cards differently. Let's say you have this and you want this to be a win condition, and you get the pick between Lightning Bolt and Dream Twist. Well, you're gonna pick the Dream Twist because you want to mill yourself, even though Lightning Bolt is so far better than the Dream Twist, so it's not even comparable. Recurring Nightmare, another fantastic card. Same here. You need to get a creature into the yard. You have to have this, and you have to have a creature to sacrifice. Then this becomes really good, and you can start doing stuff. Other than that, it doesn't do anything. It's 0. So some of those cards are obviously easier to get to work than others, but they require a setup cost compared to those cards. The second to last pile here will cover the dynamic of the value of a card. What do I mean with that? Well, a card like Electrolyze. We all know it's pretty good. It's removal. You can kill 2 things. You get to draw a card. It's instant and it's cheap. It's a very valuable card. But the value is dynamic, and by that I mean, let's say your opponent has played 1-drop, 2-drop, and both have 1 toughness, and you're like, yeah man, I'm gonna electrolyze those. And then they play something like an X2 that is just far better than the other ones, just so much better. What do? Do you take the 3 for 1 or the 2 for 1? Well, I'm gonna say a 3 for 1 is much more valuable, but in this case maybe you should revalue it a bit and say that yeah, the 2 for 1 is good enough. Going on, Consuming Aberration. I think it was a pro tour, and one of the pros, I don't remember who, but one of the Magic community stars, one of the very best, played this card, Consuming Aberration, and I believe it was a 5/5, it could have been a 4/4 and his opponent had a dorky common with the same power and toughness, and his opponent attacked and he just traded, and everyone was like, dude, why does trade off his good rare that is just gonna take over the game for a stupid common? Well, because yes, this card is much more valuable than a dorky common, but it's not worth anything if you're dead. And he knew that his opponent had a lot of reach, some burn spells and falter effects and stuff, and this was reevaluated to being just like a common, basically a 4/4/5, nothing special. It would take over the game and win, but not if you're dead. So you reevaluated the card such so that this was not worth anything if I'm dead, so I'm gonna trade it off. And he had more stuff to play, so it's okay, but from the viewer's perspective it seemed pretty stupid, but it ended up winning him the game. And that's also something you should remember, that the value of a card is not spectacularly high if you're dead. The last example is this. It happened in Theros Limited, obviously. I have a Horizon Scholar, and it's my turn. I have untapped. My opponent had tapped out to play Medomay the Ageless. I'm attacking with this. He's at 7. He says, nope, not gonna trade. I'm gonna keep my Medomay the Ageless alive and win the game, basically. He had a pretty decent board. He would win, probably win if he took an extra turn. And he had removal in hand, so why would he care? Well, I hit him for 4 and then lightning strike him to death. No problem. Had he reevaluated his card and say, yeah, well, I'm just gonna trade off here, because then my opponent's board is blank and he has like 2 cards in hand, and I have a pretty decent board. Yes, my Medomay is far better than his Horizon Scholar, but it's not use if I'm dead. Then it's worth nothing. So easy to say since I knew what I had, but I'd probably have blocked. My Medomay is worth nothing if I'm dead. And if I take away my opponent's only good card, his whole board presence, I think Medomay has done its work pretty effectively. Alright, the last pile. The value of a card can be dramatically altered. It could be like Doomblade from M12. The first format the second to first format I drafted, I ended up with this fantastic deck. It was basically mono blue with Frost Titan, 2 mind controls, a couple of mana leaks and stuff. It was just unbeatable. And then it had a couple of swamps for 4 Doomblades. Yeah, 4 Doomblades. So I'm 2-0, crushing my opponents, and in the finals I face mono black. Uh-oh. This card is like 9 or 10 out of 10, probably just 9. 10 is the super bombs. 9 out of 10. And it just drops to a 0. Straight 0. It doesn't do anything against mono black. They have no targets. So I managed to win the first game, and then I sideboard out all my swamps and all my Doomblades, bringing in like Amphibian Beast or whatever it's called, 2/4 for 4 and stuff. Like they're like a 3 or 4 on the scale, and this is a 9, and I'm just trading them out. Why? Well, because the value has shifted. This is worth 0. It's nothing. You have to be able to do that. You have to say, yeah, this card is fantastic, but not here. It's not worth anything here. So I have an extra pile here, or a couple of them. And I wanted to talk quickly about the quadrant theory. So I picked this up a few months ago, and I think it's a fantastic way to view cards. What the quadrant theory basically says is, how good is this card in the development of the game, when you're winning, when you're losing, and when the game or the board is stalled, basically. And I think that's an excellent way to view cards. Like, let's say Doomblade, how good is it in the development stage? Well, it's pretty good. When you're winning, it's fantastic. When you're losing, it's good. When the board is stalled, it's good. It's just good all around. And then we can take a card like, let's say, Act of Treason. How good it is when you develop your board. Pretty bad. It doesn't add anything. When you're winning, it's excellent. Losing, it's horrible. And board stall, it could be good. It could be bad. It depends. So a card is ranged from good to excellent and bad to good. Well, I know which one I'm taking. So that's the way you can view cards. So that's what I was thinking we should do here. So this is pack 1 pick 1 in Cons Limited, and this is our 3 contesters. We have a Debilitating Injury, a Savage Punch, and an Enoch Bonkin. So applying the quadrant theory here would mean, for Bonkin for example, how good it is when we develop the game. Well, it's fantastic. It's a 2-drop, it can grow, it's a mana sink, it's fantastic. When we're winning, it's okay. it's 2 power, you can't complain. When you're losing, it's pretty bad. It's nothing you want to do. When the board is stalled, well, it will probably not end up mattering, but I guess if it's stalled for a long time, it could do some work. So a decent card, obviously. Savage Punch. Development. Horrible. It's a 2-for-1 for your opponent. Trade your 2-2 for their 2-2 and you punch. Not worth it. When you're winning, excellent card. Killer, blocker and pump for 2. Pretty good. Losing, not worth it. You will end up losing anyway. When the board is stalled, it could probably do some work, but it's also pretty risky. So, yeah. Debilitating injury. When you're developing the board, well, if you're not going to develop it, you might as well prevent their development. So it's pretty good there. When you're winning, it's good. When you're losing, it's pretty good. When the board is stalled, it's also pretty good. So 2 of them are decent or good in 2 quadrants and pretty bad in 2. This seems like it's decent or good in 4 quadrants. My pick, debilitating injury. No question asked. Second pack. Or this is also pick 1, pack 1. We have a rare, End Hostilities. When you're developing your board, it's pretty bad, because it undoes everything. If you have it in your opener, you can shape the game so that it will be good, obviously. When you're winning, it doesn't do anything, it's completely trash. Losing, it's fantastic. Board stall, it's okay, I mean, you can take advantage of it. Then we have Mordus Skullhunter. Developing the board, fantastic. One of the very best thing you can do. When you're winning, fantastic. When you're losing, completely trash. And when the board is stalled, pretty horrible. And then the last card in this pack we're considering is Arc Lightning. When you're developing the board, pretty good. When you're winning, pretty good. When you're losing, pretty good. And board stall, pretty good. It's just very good in all 4 quadrants. My pick, Arc Lightning, because it's versatile and very strong. Last pack, and this is like the finishing pack. We have a Treasure Cruise. Development, not very good. When you're winning, pretty decent. You don't want to draw cards when you're winning, you want to add more to the board, but it's so cheap that it's probably worth it. When you're losing, drawing 3 cards for 1 mana when you're behind is a pretty good deal. It's really good. Board stall, really good. Heart Piercer, development stage, excellent. When you're winning, excellent. When you're losing, horrible. And when the board is stalled, it's probably pretty bad. And then we have Flooded Strand, and it's not much to say. It's worth a lot of money. It's very valuable. Remember that. The value based on money and the value based on playability is 2 different things, and I've been talking about the playability part. So if this was a keep draft in my local store, I'd take Flooded Strand. It's a very valuable card. If not, I'd probably take the Heart Piercer. It's basically as good as Treasure Cruise, but it goes into better decks context wise. They're like the red-black aggressive deck, pretty good. So the value of a card is pretty broad, and I've just scratched the surface of a lot of things. We talked about the vacuum, the combinations, the standalones, the bill arounds, the dynamics, and the very dramatic changes of value of a card can have. And we have tried to break down into some very small packs here. I hope you have enjoyed this little seminar, and hopefully I've reached out with my message that valuing a card is much more than just saying, well, Lightning Bolt is better than Searing Spear because it costs 1 mana and this costs 2. There is so much else that goes into the equation than that. But of course, if I had a pack and this was my 2 picks, I would pick Lightning Bolt. No problem. Thanks for watching. Please leave a comment and tell me what you think. I'm gonna start working on the other videos as soon as I can. Have a nice time.